Well, good morning, everyone. Again, this is JJ Risha with Pismo Ventures, and I have with me Brian McMahon today. And Brian is the what? Let's see, what is your title? I know you have a cool title.
See,
What?
that's the great thing about being a startup. You get
Yeah,
to, whether you're a startup accelerator, a startup venture capitalist, or a startup, you get
yeah,
to, number one, have your own t-shirt.
yeah. There you go.
Number two, you get to have your own title. So,
Right,
and for me, it's sensei. So we're very much all about the
Chief
entire,
Sensei.
yes, we're very much all about the entire, the martial arts philosophy, about a place of ever growing and ever learning. And sensei seemed like a good name at the
That
time.
that's a good one. So talking about that, I have two black belts, one in Shotokan and one in Taekwondo.
Wow.
So actually, one of them is double or second degree. So anyway, so talking about sensei, I did that for a long time.
And you get the, and
Anyways,
by the way, you get the idea from that. So that the principle is this: like
oh
anybody
yeah,
in martial arts, they will never say I'm an expert. They will always say I'm continuing to grow. So I'm
yes,
becoming better. I'm learning more moves. I'm becoming better. But nobody will ever say I've reached a stage of expertise.
no
And
one ever does.
everything that we saw wrong in startups was that everybody seems to believe that they're an expert with an opinion that they should give about what a startup should do next. And there is no expertise. There's just a journey that we're all on. And different parts of that journey have got different parts of relevance to pieces of advice that we give for other folks to
Love it.
grow. So
Yeah.
it puts us into a place of humility, and hopefully it means that we all make fewer mistakes.
You know what? It's great. I'm gonna still mention one more thing around that because what you're saying is absolutely amazing. There's a tennis player out of the UK. Um, uh, she said one day, "I'm just trying to be the best version of myself, and I will continue every day to get better. I don't think I will get there, but I'm gonna try every day."
Mm.
So I think that's the same thing as you're saying, because yeah, when I was training martial arts, same thing. They never say, I have the best kick ever. I'm there already. No, it's like I'm trying to still perfect my kick or
Yeah.
punch, etc. All
And
right.
and then, and
So
then, by the way, on that point, who do you want to be beside? Do you want to be beside the empty vessel that makes all of the noise and tells you about the three things that they've read in a Tony Robbins novel, or do you
yeah,
want to be beside the person who is striving to become better and better and better and better, and allowing you to be beside them while they're
yep,
going through that journey? Yeah, point made,
absolutely.
right?
Yeah, very true. All right. So before I introduce Brian, which kind of we have already, I'll tell you a little bit about the competition. So this week we do have three webinars. Today is one, which is you're not a unicorn yet. So I think this is going to be very interesting. So and on Thursday we have another one, and which is. I think it's I don't remember right now which one is on Thursday, but and on Friday I know it's a sales webinar. So join us for the webinars this week. Tomorrow on Wednesday we do have a live judging event, which is for the hardware and software technologies, and that was Monday last week, but due to the fire and evacuations, we had to postpone it to this week. So we will announce this week the winner for that specific category. Um, on the 12th next week and on the 17th, the week after, those would be the two final rounds. Actually, it is the final round, but it's split into two sessions for the competition. So what we're doing is just to update you, we will have 8 category winners because we did have 10. We eliminated 2 because uh, we did not have applicants for the 2 categories or enough applicants for the 2 categories, social enterprise and other. But during the final, for the final round, although we will have 8 category winners, we are going to bring in 2 wildcards from the companies that are already applied, and those wildcards would be the highest scored companies after the winners of each of the categories. So it's going to be fun to have 2 wildcards. It could be from any categories. We've already notified some to be ready because there may be very little time. So So some of the potential wildcards have already been notified. All right, so this is it as far as that's concerned. We do have a virtual networking time after this event. We will send the link and the password in the chat for you to go there. Other than that, we're so glad and happy that everybody's been finding a lot of value in what we're doing, and I'm going to leave this to Brian. Brian's going to tell you about himself a little bit. I think you should tell him, Brian, also a little bit about Expert Dojo and what you do and how you bring people in, and so that way they understand how Expert Dojo works, and then you can take the floor.
Wonderful. Thanks, JJ. Yeah, so for the next 45 minutes, I'm going to try and impart advice based on what I've seen from phenomenal cohort companies that we brought through Expert Dojo. And hopefully by the time we get to the end of it, you will have picked up some of the things that you believe will be really relevant for your startup so that you can grow your startup and you can take it to the next level. And before I get there, let me do two things. Number one, I will, exactly as JJ said, I'm going to create context around the dojo and the types of companies we have coming in and why unicorns are relevant to us and why what we say about unicorns should maybe be relevant to you. But before I do that, I want to talk to you about the concept of you are not a unicorn yet. And it came from, there was a great TV cable series. I don't know if anybody's seen it, but it was Newsroom. And in Newsroom, the main character was on stage one time, and he was on stage with a few other characters. And there was a young lady who stood up in the audience and she said, "Can you tell me why America is the greatest country in the world?" And if you haven't seen the clip, you should watch the clip because it speaks to the authenticity of the moment and the hope of what is still to come. And to cut it short, he spoke about all of the reasons why America were failing in that particular moment, and which meant that America were not the greatest country in the world anymore. But then he finished by saying, "But we can be again." And that's the key point to all of this. With you, with your business right now, especially if you're an earlier stage startup, let's say you're pre-seed or your seed, you have this vision, this dream in your head about how you already have a unicorn. And the only thing you have to do is reach that stage of achieving the unicorn that you've already visualized and you already have in place. But the reality is you've only just invented something which never existed before, right? So it can't be a unicorn yet. You still have all of the iterations of your company to go through from now all the way to the end, whereby you're going to be able to find out what's wrong, what do clients think about it. And when we actually quantified that at Expert Dojo by saying that when you launch a new company, you never actually pivot. There is no pivoting in companies. What there is evolving based on lessons. And those evolving works on the presumption that as you launch your company, you're probably 14, 15, 16% the way to having a completed unicorn in place, we'll call it. And every single day that you go through, depending on how hard you push, your objective is to increase that percentage to 15%, to 15.1%, and 15.7%, to 17%. Now, sometimes it's because you come up with a great new product and you push it out to market and everybody loves it. But most of the time, it's exactly as JJ was talking about learning through martial arts. You have to practice 1,000 kicks that don't work to find the one kick that is the greatest kick that you've ever made in your entire life. And as a startup, it's the same. So that journey, that central journey from 15% complete, so let's call it 70, 75% complete, which is one of the most complete unicorns that you can find. That journey and how quickly you can get through that journey is one of the most important things that you need to prepare for, and you need to make sure you're ready, and you need to be extremely conscious of where it's coming from. Okay, so that's the concept of why anybody who comes into Expert Dojo, anybody I see, anybody I speak to, in my mind, when somebody says, "Hey, Brian, I got a unicorn here, we're going to build $1 billion company," in my mind, I'm thinking, I'm sorry, you don't have a unicorn yet, but maybe it can be. Let's try and walk that journey in advance together. Okay, so Expert Dojo as a company have existed for around 5 years. But my journey in entrepreneurship went a hell of a long time before that. And I've lived actually in 45, 50 countries. I have had everything from property development companies to marketplaces for technology to consultancy companies that advise larger companies all over the world. And it took me to a place a few years ago where I would just read every day in Crunchbase, this is a unicorn, that's a unicorn, there's another thing, a unicorn. And what I realized was nobody was speaking about one of the most important parts of startup, which is how do we deal with the 98% failure rate? Because if we can deal with the 98% failure rate, and they are all of those normal startups that are looking to build those great companies, those folks that I said are not a unicorn yet, but somewhere between that 15% and that 70%, they are failing. If we can find out the reasons for that, then we can build greatness. And we can get to a place where more companies are going to succeed and more are going to go further. And I heard a comment, actually, I heard JJ talking about it earlier on, where he's like, you don't have to be a unicorn. And it's true, right? But you have to build something great. And you have to build something of value. And you have to build something that people are prepared to pay for, or at least give some form of currency for. So we're going to use the term unicorn, but genuinely, if you sold a company for $30 million or 50 or $100 million and you got a reasonable percentage of that yourself, for me, you're equally a winner as the person that's created a company that's $1 billion and they may have 4, 5, 3, 2, 7% of that company. And so this was my personal journey through Expert Dojo. And in the same way I say to you all, you're not a unicorn yet, I said to ourselves, we are not the greatest international accelerator on the planet yet, but we can be if we work the journey properly. And our first part of the journey was to take a place in Santa Monica, which was a large unit, about 10,000 square foot on top of the mall for anybody who's been to Expert Dojo, beautiful space. And we just used it as a laboratory to study, to learn, to look at entrepreneurs. And I would say all of my early days in what we call the dojo was about trying to walk in those footsteps of great people who are building phenomenal companies and looking from the outside about what was causing the potential failures in those companies and were there early warning signs that we could see. And then after about a year or so, and by the way, at that stage, we didn't charge any of those people for being part of the dojo, and they got free rent and we got to watch them for free. But we came out with some really good conclusions. So I want to start by telling you the 4 or 5 conclusions that we learned. And then I'm going to fast forward really quickly away from Expert Dojo towards some of our startup cohort companies. I'm going to pick them out one by one so I can show you just really awesome things that they did that were deal changers in the evolution of their company. I'm also going to pick out specific characteristics of those companies that are doing really well. And by the way, we got a heck of a lot of companies to choose from. So far, over the last year and a half, which is maybe almost 2 years that we've been investing in companies, we've invested in 75 companies. And by the time we hit the end of next year, our expectation is that we will have invested in between 150 companies and 175 companies. And virtually all of those companies are either immigrant founders or they're international companies that we bring into the United States. So rewinding back, what were the things that we learned from all of those early days when we watched the folks in the accelerator? Number 1, a toxic relationship with money. Now, I think, and I want to hit 2 separate subjects with this. The first is something I very seldom talk about, but I really believe in it deeply these days. And then the secondly is what's messed up with just venture capital in general, right? So the first one is our personal relationship with money. Here's the problem with people who are not rich, which is most of us, by the way, is that we've been brought up to believe that money is something that we should be afraid of. So we should be afraid if we don't have enough money to get us through the month. We should be afraid if we don't have enough money to pay for schooling for our kids. We should be afraid if we don't have enough money to pay for the healthcare that we might need in the future. And when we enter this relationship with something that in very many ways defines how we live our lives, it doesn't define our lives, but it defines how we live out our lives. If we live it like that, we live from a perspective of fear. And when we live from a perspective of fear, we enter into this relationship thinking, wow, if I don't have enough money, I'm going to fail. So every single thing in my mind has to be about finding enough money. In the same way that if you had a job in the real world, outside startups, your mentality is, I don't want to lose my job. I want to keep my job. I want to keep money coming in. It'll pay for nice cars. My life won't be too terrible. And maybe, just maybe, I can make it to the end of the road without having had a poor day in my life. And what that means is we miss out on all of the riches of life. And when I say riches, I don't mean the mansions and the cars and all of the stuff that goes with being wealthy. I mean the riches of the things that you can enjoy. So it's taken me, I would say, 40 years to reach this conclusion that people who have lots of money knew from the very beginning. They understand that when it comes to life, there's only one game. And that game is leverage. And there is so much money in the world. All you have to do is create the right leverage with the right assets. And the right asset might be you. And then it's easy. Okay, that's my first point. Build a good relationship with money where money works for you and you don't work in a fear relationship with money. My second point is that the people that we saw coming into our early days, we'll call it a laboratory because it wasn't an accelerator. So the people that we saw coming into the laboratory, they were so focused on raising money. Like I would walk in and we would say, hey, we're not really going to help you. We're not going to do anything for you, but we'll give you some free rent and we want to study you. And they would say, oh, Brian, it's so great to see you. It's great to hear from you. Do you know anybody who can do investment? And I would say, but you've hardly even got a concept yet. Like, why would somebody invest in you? Well, I know if I'm going to speak to 1,000 investors and that will get me through to 50 meetings, and those 50 meetings and I'll find somebody to invest. But hang on, if you're going to be investing 80% of your time in finding people who can give you money, can you imagine if you could actually take that investment of time and put it into growing your business? If you could put it into learning all of the things that you needed to become stronger? And so my point here is not, especially as a venture capitalist, my point here is not, don't go after venture money. Venture money is evil. My point here is have a great relationship with money, build greatness, build a company that will make venture capitalists want to come for you. Don't be the person who's the needy person who's begging the venture capitalists for money. And again, to put that into context, you got to realize most venture capitalists are exactly the same as startups. Most are like me. We are general partners. And that means that we have limited partners. And that means that over regular periods of time, we go out to the market and we say, please, can we have some money? So we're doing that. So what do you think we need most? We need wins. And who do we need wins from? We need them from exceptional startups. So don't focus on being the needy person looking for investments. Focus on being the epic startup with your chest puffed out and your shoulders nice and tall, building a great company without arrogance and being polite, but knowing the value of what you have. And we saw it time and time again. And so many startups spend so long of that journey when they should have been focusing on building their 15% completion rate to their 70% completion rate, just trying to find investment. So they started from that needy place. So if you are a startup, make sure you're focused on building greatness. Number 2, we looked at brand. And America are the greatest brand building nation on the planet. Full stop. Until a moment came a little while ago when lean startup became very popular. Me personally, I struggle massively with lean startup to the extent that I would say to people, I do not like lean startup. And that is not because of Steve and everything that he put in place for the book is a great book. It's because how it's been interpreted. And a book that was meant to say, look, don't spend 10 years in isolation working out your great plan and making it perfect and missing out on the timing of a market. That's what it meant to say. But the way it was translated into the willing audience who wanted to hear this different message was build something shitty, build it quick, get it out to the market. And then as soon as you get it out to the market, then everybody's going to be able to see that this product is terrible and they're going to tell you how to make it better. Don't do that. You lost this great brand storytelling, which is absolutely the most important part to America remaining as the greatest startup empire on the planet, or maybe regaining the title of being the greatest startup empire on the planet. So focus on the brand of your product in the same way that many of the companies that we saw at the dojo at the beginning were not doing. And then make sure that that brand is so strong that you're at Tom's shoes. You know, people want to buy your $150 overpriced shoes because they love the feeling that, number one, they're hip and cool, right? It doesn't just work on charity on its own. But number two, they love the feeling that some poor African now has a pair of shoes that they would never have had before. Patagonia, exactly the same. I know people who religiously will only buy in Patagonia because they know how careful they are about the environment and about the planet. Ben and Jerry's. What an epic brand story Ben and Jerry's was. You know, Haagen-Dazs were the big corporate bad guys, and Ben and Jerry's are the nice, happy farmers taking care of the world. And Ben and Jerry's decimated Haagen-Dazs in the early days because they used that brand to break through. I don't even need to mention Apple because we all know Apple. We've all seen Simon Sinek, like The Art of Why, in how to create the perfect brand for yourself. What about Lyft? Like Lyft did a great job against Uber. Uber dominated that space and used price competition to push out all of their competitors unfairly, I would add. So Lyft came in and they said, we're not going to compete on price, not initially at least. Price would be a component, but we are going to compete on us being good people. If you're going to be in a car with someone and traveling to another place, you want to be with good people. And they created that good feel factor to the extent that for 10 years, I never got a Lyft. Now, I never got an Uber even. Are Lyft better people than Uber? I don't know. But their brand suggested they were, and that was good enough for me. So, okay, so far we've got relationship with money and we got brand. What's next? Marketing. Tech entrepreneurs suck at marketing. And I mean suck at marketing. Tech agencies suck at marketing. It is like the worst example about how we should grow a company that has ever existed, because there are two major components of fuel on this fire. The first is, in many cases, an unlimited amount of venture capital money. And on the other side of it, people who are ignorant about the skills of building a great marketing campaign. And whether it's ignorant or whether it's lazy or whether just the first part of the fuel, which is so much money, makes people not care, I don't know, but I do know it's a major problem. Do not copy tech entrepreneurs who just do Facebook ads all the time. Copy internet marketers. Look at Tony Robbins. Look at his playbook for what they've built. Incredible. Like, they'll build click magnets, they'll build funnels, they'll build automated systems. The greatest way that you can possibly build your company is by building it through building strong, loyal fans who are fanatical about your product because you have built something for them using the internet marketer's playbook. It is the best advice I will give you on this call. Nobody else is doing it. You should do it. I normally only tell this to my cohort, actually, because I rely on the fact that everybody outside has got no clue what they're doing. And then the final component is building a really strong structure to what you're doing. And that structure includes mindset, by the way. And mindset means training your mind the same way that you would do if you were training as an athlete. You know, if you were going to be the top football player in the world, the top tennis player in the world, how would you train? Well, it wouldn't just be about I practice 8 hours a day. And it wouldn't even just be about I practice 8 hours a day and I do it within certain type of practice regimes. You would say, well, I eat certain types of food, because I know the things I eat are going to be directly proportionate to how my body reacts. I go to sleep at a certain time. Like, you don't get it. As an entrepreneur, you are starting a sprint marathon every single day. This wears on your body and it wears on your mind, like working 13, 14, 15 hours a day. I see JJ doing this and I think to myself, there's no way that guy is getting more than 6 or 7 hours sleep a night. No way. But he has to make sure they're a good quality 6 or 7 hours sleep. And he has to make sure that he's eating properly and he's fueling himself up, that he's ready. He also has to make sure that he's surrounding himself with positive people. Because if you have more than 1 or 2 or 3 areas of negativity, you're just not going to be able to make it through to your 300th daily sprint marathon. You're going to wake up one morning and you're going to say, enough, I'm done, I'm kaput, I'm out. And you don't want that to happen to you. And then the rest of the structure is really built around the team and the business that you actually have yourself. Now, remember, I haven't spoken about product fit because I'm inherently assuming that if you have your product ready, that you have been obsessive about creating the greatest product fit in the market, which people need, not they want, they need, not a paper cut problem that they have, but a finger chopped off problem that the consumers have. I'm assuming that you have that in place. So we learned those learns anyway from the initial laboratory, and we thought, okay, these here, if done properly, would actually help a company become a unicorn. Like if we can create a structure whereby we can make sure that the marketing is aggressive and it's focused and it's great and it's awesome and it's to the point and it's unrelenting, you're David against Goliath, then we can build a unicorn. If we can make sure that investors are so fascinated by what you're building and infatuated by actually wanting to have you as one of their investments, you're going to get lots of money. The investment's going to be fine. If you build a brand that everybody absolutely loves on top of a structure, a team, and a mindset that allows you to go forward, you will build a unicorn. And we were 70% right. Actually, I would say we were 50% right. How's this, right? But before I tell you the next 50%, let me tell you the next couple of little parts of the journey. So then we decided we were going to create mentorship, we were going to create introductions, and then we were going to bring in companies, and we were going to make some small investments into those companies ourselves. And we did all of this out of the mall, and this was like bleeding into year 2 and year 3. And I was really a startup as well. Even though I was making some investments, I was paying the overheads, I was creating the brand, I was making sure that the message was out there. I was building from the 15% at the beginning, which was my general vision at the start was the world is in trouble, entrepreneurship is in trouble. We're not teaching it in school. Our entrepreneurs are failing too much. We want to help them by providing mentorship and assistance and investment and growth and all of the other things that they would need to try and do it. That's 15% completion because it's too vague. But what we found out from the beginning was, now we have all of these extra components to add in. Now we can start making investments and we can start getting directly engaged with the companies. But then a few other things happened. And the next thing is the most conclusive thing, which has formed the core of our whole program and formed the core of what can make you become a unicorn more than anything else. And that is that we realized the importance of beast vision. And beast vision is when you look at that end point and you say, what does Expert Dojo look like in 5 years' time? And I don't mean just, we've invested in 1,000 companies. That's a numerical outcome. I mean, what does it look like as far as the impact, the specific impact that we have made on specific companies? And sometimes you need a little bit of time to build this vision because you need to look at the market forces outside. You need to look at your own value stack. You need to look at what's happening within competitors. There's a lot of different areas to look at, but you have to go through this entire vision look because we suddenly came to a place where we thought, wow, if we can create an organization that focuses on building the biggest visions on the planet through phenomenal brands, using incredible growth hacking, built on top of phenomenal structures and mindset, whereby they can then grow that company to be given as much investment as they want to. Now we have a recipe in our minds of what can build a unicorn. And that's where we got to. And so I want you to add, if you're making notes here, obviously you've looked at the internet marketing growth hacking, you've got the investment, you've got the fact that obviously product fit at the very beginning is massively important, or you're not going to have anybody take anything. And you've also got the fact that you want to make sure that your mindset and structure is in place. But I want you to layer in there about building a great vision for yourself, an epic vision for what your company looks like in the future. From our perspective, we see Expert Dojo bringing out more unicorns than any other venture capitalist on the planet. But that's even just our first stop. That's not even our vision. Our vision is that we use the hundreds of millions of dollars that we will make from bringing out the greatest unicorns on the planet and finding them all over the world. And then we will use that money to then make sure that every single person on the planet has an equal opportunity to be able to start a company successfully, irrespective of race, culture, poverty, gender, ethnicity, anything. So, which is at first look an impossible plan, but that's why it's our huge vision. So it all leads to the vision, and every person listening in on this should have the same huge vision. Remember, you're going to a venture capitalist. You're going to require to scale your company to a large amount. If you're going to do that, you need to be building something which is so huge that only the foolish or the brave would try, but you are neither the foolish nor are you the brave, you're the smart, because you have a very specific plan based on the other criteria that I mentioned to be able to get you there. Okay, so look, I've kind of done that a lot. I'm going to finish with kind of where we've come to today. And then I want to open it up for a few minutes for some questions if there are any. And if not, I'm going to go into lessons from the greats. And I'm going to talk about, I'm going to go both ways. I'm going to take out some just horrible examples of companies that did it badly. And then I'm going to go to lessons from the greats that are just the companies that we have been privileged to watch come through our cohorts and build something really good. But before I do that, let me tell you the place that we came to. So we took all of our learning, we got our course, we built our curriculum, we built this training program, which we believe is the best training program in the world. And it's all part of our accelerator. You cannot get access to it yet unless we actually invest money into you. And now we invest $100,000 checks into companies. We take companies in from, our current cohort, we've got India, we've got Egypt, we've got Africa, we've got three female founders out of the US who we absolutely adore. We've got a immigrant founder out of the US as well. We've got a European founder that we've put in there too. And we're just about to take a Canadian founder, and that's very similar to what our cohorts are like. And we got to this place because if you're truly going to change the world, you have to look sometimes at the opposite to the trend to where everybody else is going. So from our perspective, we were watching governments become more exclusive, and exclusive means nobody could come into their borders. We were watching the rich get richer. We were watching the poor get poorer. We were watching countries self-implode because they weren't bringing in great people from the outside. And we thought, great, we're going to create a gateway to America, to the rest of the world. We're going to bring in all of these companies, and then we'll layer in some great American companies that we can put in on top. And as I mentioned, we put in $100,000 in investment. We sell nothing. There's nothing to sell. We only invest. And then afterwards, we would put in up to $1 million in investment if we see the companies are really, really scaling. That's what we do. And as I said to a chap this morning that I really wanted to get into our cohort and invest in, they will never find anybody more aggressive than me on growth, and by extension, my team and what we do. So, okay. You get the idea. That's what we built. That's why we built it. Now, if we have any questions in here, I'm looking in the chat. I'm going to give it a hot second. If you've got anything that you want to check on that, then stick it in there and I'll happily answer it. And then if not, I will move on, and I'm going to talk about epically horrible, terrible tales of misery that have got lessons built into them. And then I'm going to speak about our companies as well. Okay, we got a quiet crew, but that's okay. Quiet's good.
Brian, we have a couple of questions on the Q&A.
Okay. Hit me, Stephen. I don't see anything in chat, so you might want to just tell me what those questions are.
Okay, so from Mahon, he said, you're a very good speaker. Thank you for sharing your expertise. And he also said, can you name some internet marketing companies?
So internet marketing companies and internet marketing agencies, right? So internet marketing companies, honestly, either copy Gary Vaynerchuk or copy Tony Robbins. Gary Vaynerchuk is a genius in what he does. Honestly, Gary Vaynerchuk could start a chicken farm next week, and it would be the third biggest chicken farm in America, because he understands how to market. The first thing he does is he builds his own domain expertise. He makes sure everybody knows him, and he makes sure everybody sees the expertise in what he has way more than the ego of what he's trying to portray across the screen, right? But if you then look deeper into what his methodology is, and by the way, just Google online, internet techniques of Gary Vaynerchuk, internet marketing techniques of Tony Robbins, and you'll see what they'll do. First thing they'll do is they'll get a customer relationship management system like a HubSpot. and then they will build a click magnet. They'll probably write a book first. I'm not saying every tech person should write a book, but some should actually, especially those in the for cause space. They'll write a book, and Gary's book, he wrote a great book on just how to be epic and how to be a greater you. Tony Robbins has obviously done a gazillion books. Then they'll do a number of speaking engagements, so people will see them on the speaking tour. Then they'll create click magnets, and click magnets are normally, you'll see it on, you see them on the internet. It might be something that says, this is a picture of Jennifer before, and Jennifer looks a certain way. And it's like, this is a picture of Jennifer now. And if you feel like Jennifer before and you want to be Jennifer now, click here, right? And then you get through to a separate page, and now they've got you, because what they want to do is they want to get your email address. That's the only objective of this whole exercise. And then on the next page, it will say, so if you want to see how Jennifer got there, have a free guide in how you can be the best you that you can be. Right. And I'm giving a vague example. It could be 100 different things, right? On making money online, on doing anything else. And then you click there and you put your email address in, and they've got you. And then the second your email address is in there, you go into a HubSpot or into some other email funnel, and they will have pre-registered 5, 10, 15, 20 emails specifically targeted at your reactions to certain events that happen. So it might be that an event is created and you either accept the event or you don't accept the event. If you accept it, that will set off a chain of emails. If you don't accept it, that will set off a chain of emails. Here's what this is amazing at. It helps increase the amount of conversions that you get from your marketing, because you are engaging with your people on a way better basis. But yeah, just look that up online. Just look up any of those and you'll see them. And there's a bunch of marketing agencies. I don't like recommending specific agencies online, because every time I recommend them, they end up being a friggin' disaster 6 months later because they grew too fast or because they suddenly got a little bit too cocky. But I will say, you can find, there's lots of folks out there who do this.
Okay. We have 2 more questions from Mahon.
Yep.
One is, do the companies have to be corporations for you to take in your accelerator? And the second is, how much equity do you take?
Yes. So yes, for anybody to invest in they can invest in a limited liability company, but it's very unlikely. Normally angel investors might be okay with that. But anybody who's an institutional investor will insist on you forming a corporation. So yes, you have to form a corporation for anybody to invest in. And I would say these days, traction is king. Like, a lot of people who are institutional investors are looking to see some form of proof of life, like anything. You'll get the people who will invest generally at concept level are generally friends and family, are generally local angels, people who know you, maybe people who've seen your execution skills before. But you want to get yourself to a place of proof of life as early as you possibly can. Now, some on the call may say, but Brian, how can I do that? I need to build like an iOS app and an Android app, and that's going to cost $140,000. I would say, if you look at the Wizard of Oz, the wizard did it pretty well for many years before he should have moved it into a proper machine that could actually tell the future. But during his period, while he was behind the curtain, that's sometimes what a startup has to do. You got to be the wizard behind the curtain, and you've got to be doing the things. Like, I always remember, there's a great company called Clout. If anybody remembers it, it was bought many years ago. But Clout were out of Singapore, and what they did was they measured your influence level as a person. So they would look at JJ and they would say, okay, JJ, how many followers on Twitter do you have? How many fans do you have on Facebook? How many mentions do you have online? And they would do all this kind of stuff. And then they would say, JJ, you are a 3.2. And then they'd look at Brian and they'd say, well, Brian, you've got, such an amount of Twitter followers and such. Brian, you are a 2.9. And I'd be like, well, why the hell am I behind JJ? That sucks. I want to have a better social media rating. But they were doing this on an Excel spreadsheet. Like, literally in the early days, they were doing it out of his bedroom on an Excel spreadsheet and a calculator. So you don't always have to provide the very top level of every expense that needs to be done to prove that a concept will work. People just want to know that other folks will use it. And then our terms are always the same. We are a pure accelerator, and accelerator models, whether it's Y Combinator or 500 Startups or Techstars or us, we all work around the same type of terms. For us, it's if it's somebody wants to take $100,000, it's 7%, which is normally a safe note, and that's normally a cap. And if they take $50,000, which we don't mind if it's one or the other, they would normally give 3.5%. And then we reserve the opportunity to be able to invest up to a further $1 million at a cap of $10 million in the future. So we're in for the long run. We throw everything behind this company. We don't see ourselves like many other accelerators. Look, we believe we're different to accelerators because we don't believe that accelerators act as growth accelerators. We believe they act as introduction accelerators. And while we believe we're a growth accelerator, but the principle of the model is the same, which is that we have all these people that partner with you all the way through from the very beginning to building yourself, to building your brand, to building your company, to building your users, to building your investment, all the way to the end. Okay,
Great,
we good, Stephen? Or you got anything else?
We don't have any more questions.
Okay, beautiful. Okay, so we got 15 minutes left. So if anybody has any questions that they want to throw in, please feel free to throw them in the chat, or Stephen, just interrupt me while I'm talking. And then let's look at like tales from the horrible and then tales from the great. So let's start with a recent one, which is Quibby. Look at what happened on Quibby. Their entire play was how do I raise as much money as I possibly can from as many people as I need to raise it from? And the belief was, if we spend enough money, then we will get enough users. And the problem is that belief exists because that is a mentality within all startups, within all investors, whereby investors feel if you are looking to raise money and I have somebody that I can give an unlimited amount of money to, then we will beat you, AKA Amazon, right? Look at Amazon. Amazon was a terrible company for 10 years. They lost $6 billion over a 10-year period before they became successful. Like, I don't know about you guys, but like, give me $6 billion. I think I can make Expert Dojo a success. And that's the mentality. That's the problem we have in America, actually. Many of the activities that are happening by major venture capital firms are destroying the fiber of what makes American entrepreneurship great by overflowing it with money and destroying a system which should be based on merit of great entrepreneurs coming through. But sometimes the ego of the venture capitalists goes to a level whereby even they believe that they can be kingmakers or queenmakers of anything. So from your perspective as all startups, I want you to look at Quibby and realize, and I want you to look at Quibby the same as we work, right? And I want you to look at it and realize that a lot of money on its own does not a king or queen make. Traction and building huge outreach beats and trumps everything. I always say, especially to the female entrepreneurs who come in, is that, look, there is bias and sexism throughout this entire industry. It is undeniable, it is there, and it will always be there, in my opinion. It may become less and less, but it will always be there as it stands right now. How do you overcome bias and sexism? You overcome it with greed and FOMO. So there's nothing I like more. I'll actually give you a great example. Let me start with somebody great, a beast, an amazing entrepreneur. We had a lady called Debbie. I had a company called Vertanza, one of the greatest training companies, online training for universities, one of the best training companies I've ever seen. And she put this thing in place with phenomenal software and great backup in place. And she said, hey, we want to raise $100,000 because we want to take this company to the next level. And I said to her, because of inherent bias and sexism that exists in this space, and ageism, by the way, as well, you will not receive investment the way you are right now. And you just won't get it because that's how the world is. And it's unfair and it's terrible and it's awful, but that's exactly how it is. But I'm going to invest in you. But if I invest in you, please don't lose our money. And the way you're not going to lose our money is to help replace sexism and bias with greed and FOMO. And that means you just got to be the beast that I know that you can be. And you have got to build your company with an attitude of FU to investors. You know, if you want to invest, you're going to make a ton of money, which I always believed she was going to make us, right? If you don't invest in us, then I'm going to make a ton of money. But I don't care either way, but get the hell out of my way. So what she did was she focused on obsessive growth and on phenomenal product fit. And then the money came, and she then raised $1.25 million from 5 angels groups, which is almost unheard of. Like Tech Coast Angels, Pass Angels, I believe came into, Thai Angels, I believe came into, Band of Angels came in as well. I think she's got like 3 other angels groups who are looking at it. 1.25 million with over 200 angels who are now involved with her company going forward. And it's because she was unrelentingly focused on making sure that the product was driven in the market and not focused on just going after one investor after another investor, which was what Quibby did. Quibby just got $1.6 billion, which you don't even need. Then they brought in a CEO, which was not even necessary. Like Meg Whitman is a great CEO, but do we want to put Meg Whitman in charge of a brand new startup, which is launching tomorrow, and she knows nothing about the demographic that she's going to? Maybe not. Right? And it's easy to judge afterwards. But I think one thing we can all agree on is that money does not solve all the problems. We need to make sure you as entrepreneurs, and especially non-rich entrepreneurs who don't have mommy or daddies with trust funds, who haven't gone to a Ivy League school, and who don't intimately have dinners with venture capitalists, you have to build in beast mode. I want to give you another great company. And this is one about opportunity, right? Which was, let me do a comparison again. Actually, I like these comparisons. Let's use WeWork as a comparison. Everybody loves beating on WeWork right now, so why should I be any different? And they started off something which was kind of a lie, right? What they said was, we're building the future of work, which is not a workplace at all. We're building the future of work, which is a technology. And then because the more people who say this, the more people who listen to this opportunity, the more people then believe it. And I'm going to get to Theranos in a second, okay? Because WeWork was only in the baby division compared to what Theranos did. But they then perpetuated this by then doing VC after VC and saying, this is the future of work. Work is not a place. Work is an attitude. Work is where you are. And we're going to monetize all of the people in this, and we're going to make it huge. Until SoftBank came in with $4 billion. And what happened after that? Well, Adam, the founder, suddenly had a beautiful jet. Suddenly he had houses everywhere. Suddenly he had money in the bank like he'd never had before. And suddenly WeWork went from losing tens of millions of dollars to hundreds of millions of dollars. And they went from losing hundreds of millions of dollars to billions of dollars. Pride, ego, arrogance, sloth, all mixed in one little cauldron that's called a waste of space. And the company folded. But here's the funny thing. If enough people hadn't said, stop this now, they would have probably kept on pumping money into it, because at the end of the day, those companies end up with the unsuspecting taxpayer and stockholders who end up going into it. So I was glad they went down. Now let me do like a great comparison on the other side of a market that's ripe for it. One of our companies, UvaPay, I love these guys. UvaPay, rather than they want to go into banking, right? They want to be one of the biggest banks in the world. Now, if they were anybody else, they would go and say, okay, what do HSBC do? What do ING Barings Bank do? What do Bank of America do? I want to do that. I want to create the greatest bank in the world, and I want to make sure that that bank is awesome. But these guys said, let's look for the greatest opportunity, real opportunity, not a lie, the opposite, the purest truth that we can find. And what they realized was that in India, there are hundreds of millions of people that are unbanked. Isn't that crazy? And then there are still hundreds of millions of people that they're either unbanked or they have awful banking. And then there are also hundreds of millions of many of the same people that either have no internet or they have terrible internet. So what they did was they said, hey, we're going to go after those people, and we're going to find the biggest pain point that they have, and we're going to fix that pain point. And it turned out that biggest pain point was paying bills. Like, it's really hard to pay bills online when you have no internet access and you also don't have a bank. But they facilitated a technology that allowed them to do that. And they increased their revenue from $100,000 a month in platform revenue, of which they get like 2 or 3%, to $1 million a month. Now, within a year, by the way, now we're going to grow that from $1 million a month to $10 million a month within the next year. And then what we're going to do, that's not even the real product. It's just the Trojan horse. The real product are micro loans, micro insurance, also making sure that we can have micro savings accounts so we can top up what they actually pay into to pay off their bills and have a little savings account put in place. This is 3.5 billion people. Nobody's looking at the greatest opportunity in the world. So what do you want to do? You want to build some shitty new office of the future, which has been done 50 times already by Regis, HQ, Premier office spaces, Barrister office spaces, everybody. Or you want to find an incredible blue ocean that has the ability to make billions of dollars in profits, not even millions. So I love those guys. I feel bad going to Theranos actually, because it's just so obvious. I have even though she lied at the end and she did terrible things, at the beginning, I have a tremendous respect for entrepreneurs who reach for the impossible and do everything they can to get there. What you just have to do is always make sure that you're not believing in your own message rather than what the consumers are telling you. And she did that. She got carried away. She got too deep in a lie. Then she brought in advisors around her to make sure that that lie was maintained. And then the company ended up crashing because there was nothing there in the first place and everybody lost their money. Now, out of 75 companies, I have so many companies, but I want to pick a company which is an incredible female entrepreneur to counter the female entrepreneur out of Theranos, and someone who built a product which had a real need in the world. And she was based over in the United Kingdom. And I remember when I first saw her, I saw the character that oozed out of her. And her name was Anna, and her company is Sensate, which is a device that ties into the vagus nerve, which is the nerve directly tied into stress. And Anna created this device, brought it out to market. She was working with, it was her partner that brought the device to market. He was a Harley Street surgeon, which is a very well-respected surgeon over in the United Kingdom. But she came out as the person who's going to be the CEO of the company that's going to bring it to the next level. And as soon as she walked in my office, I knew that investors would want to put money into her straight away. And I knew that she would be able to grow a great product. And she did all of those things. She created a Kickstarter campaign for pre-sales, made 600,000 out of that. We had a VC that generally never invest in consumer goods, invest in them like that. We then had another VC who never invested in investor goods, invested in them like that. And she raised her money very easily. She increased her sales very easily. She put together a fantastic supply chain. She's now working on developing more products on top of those products. We believe that company will hit their Series A next year. Just an epic example of great entrepreneurs doing phenomenal things. So look, we are 56 minutes into this. I want to be respectful to everybody's time. I said we'd keep you here for an hour, and we'd hit it pretty hardcore. And I believe I've hit it pretty hardcore. And there are hundreds of other companies out there that I see every day that I have tremendous respect for. And I just want to finish this with kind of an overall generalist statement that ties into my feeling about startup and about life in general. And that's that I feel tremendously privileged to be in this early stage startup space. I believe it's one of the most creative and beautiful things that anybody could do. I actually feel desperately sorry for anybody who has to work in a job for their entire life and they just get to live out other people's dreams. And then when I look at entrepreneurs and I see what they're doing, I don't see them with pity because they're struggling at the beginning. I don't see them even as brave people. I just see them as incredibly smart people who have managed to get a hold of the purpose of why they exist in this world, and they've grabbed it with both hands. So I feel a kinship with everybody coming in. I have been lucky and fortunate to be in a place where we can invest into 75 companies. I feel absolutely privileged to be around some of the great venture folks in the space today, from JJ and the great, great work he's doing on this program to educate and help and elevate startups. And long may that journey continue. And for all of you out there, I don't mind, and you don't mind if you build a unicorn. What you do mind is if during this journey, you do not give 150% to build the very greatest thing that could have possibly been built. So whatever you've got out there, go back now, relook at what you're building, relook at how it's been built, relook at how aggressively you're going to market, and relook at what your milestones look like to building that greatness that you're going to put together. And that, my friends, is a wrap from me.
Well, thank you, Brian. That was really, really cool. So, some comments saying, thanks for the candor. So this is really good. Definitely thanks for the candor and for being open and telling entrepreneurs the way it is. Any questions for Brian? He really has to leave in a few minutes, so if you have questions, it's now or never. You don't get access to Brian except through JJ.
That's right. That's right.
All right. Any questions to Brian, please? All right. Audio questions. If you have a question for him, I'd like to just speak it. All you have to do is raise your hand, and I'll bring you in to ask him a question. Okay.
Everybody's like, can Brian go? I want to do the networking. Yeah, listen, I know. Look, with these conversations with people, hopefully people will have taken one or two bits out of it that were relevant for them, and just and make that happen for them. I'm glad I could be a part of it, JJ. I'm glad I could just watch what you're doing here, which is truly incredible. Like, how long has this been going for now? 2 months? 3 months?
July.
It must feel like 3 years, right?
Yes, exactly.
But it's incredible. Like, what you've built is you're building an ecosystem in itself. Like, this is no longer a competition or an event or anything else. This is a country.
It is a country by itself. So we do have a question. So yes, Mahon, Brian, and Expert Dojo, they are in Santa Monica. So they are in LA. I don't know if you saw any of the other questions. You answered, do companies have corporations? Do you have them?
Yeah.
You answered that one. Okay. All right. So that's it. I guess this would be a wrap for us as well. We do have the virtual networking right after this. Grab the link, grab the password. You have to use the passcode, otherwise you will not be able to join. But I could tell you that Brian is really busy, and he's not going to be able to join us there because he has a cohort that he's running, so he won't be able to join us.
But I'm happy, JJ, if anybody wants to reach out, like, I'm always happy. My email is brian@expertdojo.com. I'm very accessible. I do, like JJ and probably all of you as well, we get a lot of emails, but I respond to absolutely everybody. And if there are resources that I can get over to you, I'm very happy to give you resources. If there are introductions I can make and I know people that can help, I'm very happy to do introductions. We all want to help startups go forward.
Yep, that's what we do, and that's what we like to do, and that's what we're trying to do, build this ecosystem to make sure everybody has a chance to succeed. That's really, with all the knowledge that comes in, if you don't have all this knowledge, there is a high risk of failure. With all this knowledge, potentially better chance of succeeding. So, well, very good. Okay, thank you very much. That was absolutely amazing. We will talk soon.
Sayonara, my friend. Thanks, everybody.
All right, take care. Everybody grab the link, and we can move to Ohio. Talk soon.